Firstly, I'd like to say welcome to everybody. Hope that you're all well in this absolutely crazy time that we are finding ourselves in. We'll go through a bit of housekeeping to begin with as well. You could stay muted to begin with. If you do feel like you've got anything to say, please add it into the chat box, and Sarah Stevenson, my colleague, will kind of invite you in into the conversation. We do encourage conversation best we can. I think the benefit of these meetings that we've had so far is that sharing of practice and conversations and helping each other out. So we do want people to talk as much as possible, understanding that it might be slightly different to how we usually deliver these PE League meetings. So we'll kind of see how it goes, and hopefully we'll get some good conversations and you'll get some good insight and some supporting stuff to take back to school. What else did I say? I think that was, we are recording this meeting because what we would like to do is publish it in kind of our PE support area of our website, so that people that can't make tonight have the opportunity to listen back to some of the points that we're able to discuss, and hopefully share that learning like I said before. So going on to tonight's agenda, hopefully you'll have all seen it and hopefully it's going to click through now. So we're fortunate to have Steve Caldecott from AFP here to discuss some health and safety guidance from their point of view, and talk about some documents that they've published. Then we'll go on to some social distancing in PE. Hopefully we've got Andrew on the line, who's going to discuss some of the ideas of what he's been doing in schools, what he's planning to do in schools, and then also give you the opportunity to discuss what you've been doing, any worries and any successes as well, so that we can all hopefully support each other to continue with school sport, PE and physical activity. A brief update from ourselves on some of the stuff that we've been doing, or some of the stuff that we're looking to do, and then hopefully get some of that shaped by yourselves as well. A discussion around the frequently asked questions document that's due out from Sport England, a discussion around summer holiday provision, and then also just some points around the mapping of that we'll be doing, and the website reporting that you'll be required to do. And then it's not on there, but also a quick update on the Yorkshire PE Awards, and then any other business. So that's enough from me to begin with. So if I can hand over to Steve from AFP, hopefully he'll be able to take you through some guidance that they've produced.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Can you hear me there, Gavia?
Yeah, I can hear you, Steve, yeah.
Okay, should be okay then. Thank you. So the way we've approached this is we're doing about 15-20 minutes or so. And I've not got screen share, so I will be saying next slide, please. Got an able assistant at the other end. We do it that way today. It's the second time we've done a version of this, and it's interesting to see that on the agenda you've got some useful, talking about some ideas afterwards, which is actually the way to do this. So as was mentioned before, I'm the AFTI Health and Safety Lead, and we've been dealing with lots of these questions, as you can imagine. And we also have two other people in the team, who's helped us produce some of the documents and guidance. I'll tell you what afterwards. So it is, as we say here, it's an interpretation. I expect more. So next slide, please. Yeah, go back. Yeah, this is a really key one, because this layer in here is anybody making a decision about what you can and cannot do needs to consider this, because the bottom part is the government guidance, and it changes, as we know, 5 o'clock every night, something new is announced. So this is as we speak at this moment. So everything that happens has to be based on that principle, and that's the question you need to be asking yourself all the time: am I sticking within the rules of that time? Now, the second layer is the employer's interpretation. So from your point of view, whoever you are working with, and if you work with different employers, you have to follow the rules and the guidance set out by that employer you are working with, who should have interpreted the government guidance. And the last part is AFP, or actually anybody who's going to further produce guidance and interpretations, because we're not the law, we're not rules, we're just trying to give a take on it. So I hope that's quite clear. It's always the government part, but you must listen to the employer, because they will have interpreted. And what we say today is an interpretation of that work. So that's the context of this. Okay, move on, please. So here's the key principle through that. So we are always building on government messages. We might not like them, and we'll all have different opinions of whether or not it should or shouldn't be happening. Schools should be open sooner, later, etc. And we know some have been, well, many have been open right through anyway. So this interpretation of guidance is important. And I think the most important part, again, you can summarize through there, is you have to check gov.uk on a regular basis. And I literally probably would put that on every day, because new guidance is being released. We've had releases about sports clubs, because we're talking about the education setting here, but sports being allowed into groups of 6 now. There is an announcement come out from Swim England, but the swimming pools are not yet open, and so on. So all sorts of different areas are being released with different guidance. So next slide, please. So that has to be essential, and I think it's vital that whatever we're saying, we should show that we are modelling the most important messages that are still there, and that's been ever present for what, 12 weeks or so. So things such as, and that's just an example, that the need for washing, for hand sanitisation, and the 2-metre rule. So I've not put them all up there because I'm sure you all know them now. They must be the start point for everything. So if you're asking yourself a question, is what I'm doing appropriate? Yes, you are looking at your employer, but if you think you might be going off-piste, off that message, you need to bring it back into staying whatever the current guidance is at that time. Okay, so next slide, please. So, and the reason we put this here is because this is actually part of an email we received from early work with DFE. And I think many people thought it was a magic, well, can you tell us what we can and can't do? And sometimes people get a little bit disappointed that you've not told us if we can do this and if we can do that. And for example, one of the things we'll talk about later about activities, there is not a list of activities you can do and a list of activities you can't do. It's all principle based. And so this is very, very clear that the DFA have said this, it's up to the individual schools. So it may be that you're doing one activity in one school and another one has taken an activity idea and said, we're not doing that yet here. That's their choice. But from our perspective, from AFBI's perspective, if you think of the most common areas that we teach physical education and school sport, all the areas can be taught if you change, amend, and do them in creative ways. So for example, gymnastic activity, dance, games, athletic activity, outdoor and adventurous activity, all sorts of ways of doing that. However, you can't currently yet do swimming because swimming pools are not open. But there will be a time very soon when swimming pools are open, when we will, yes, be able to do swimming again, but it will be done following the rules of that time. So I hope that's clear. So if anybody tries to sell you a list of things you can and can't do, that's not possible. Where we don't suffer in our profession is with imagination and creativity. We're not worried about it. What we have a worry with is if somebody says that you can't do games, for example. True. And they're trying to use a sporting context and use it in PE. It's just you have to do it in a different way. Okay, so next slide, please. So these are the questions always through your own practice you have to be asking as you work through. Does your teaching activity meet the guidelines set by government? It's the fundamental principle to be does what you are proposing to teach meet the requirements of any whole school expectations? So that's clear again. If you move from a setting to a setting, just check that you're still following the rules of what they've actually interpreted. And the most important thing of all, now there are some people in this setting who have already been doing this for a while, so you should have reviewed your risk assessments, but if you haven't, you should actually make sure you do a review of your risk assessments. We always say that they should be reviewed at least annually. PE risk assessment should be reviewed at least annually. And if anything major happens along the way, you also review them. So for example, you would say that building works would always mean that you would review the building works, what the impact of the building works has had on your teaching. So if, for example, you had a new sports hall or something happened, people in the yard. This is, everybody is affected by this. So everybody needs to be able to do their own risk assessments completely, thoroughly, and go from reconsider and reviewing them again. What you don't need to do is create new risk assessments on a new template. You just have to look at the same risk assessment, but build in and embed COVID principles. Okay, so that's important. You must have done that. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the immediate actions, and I apologize if you're already doing this, but this actually covers the base. And that's really important. It just covers the basis. So apologies if you're already on this. So have you got that risk assessment done? Have you got employers' guidance on regular cleaning regimes? So because hand washing and because hand sanitizer, etc., are so important, how has that been interpreted in the place that you are in? You know, so how frequent will they? Most places are saying now that, well, before every lesson and after every lesson, then you'll get them all to wash their hands, and you'll wash the equipment beforehand and wash the equipment afterwards, and so on. But that's fine, but you have to check if that's what they said. So you really do need to, from a PE context, discuss with the SLT and build it into the risk assessment, the plan for reduced mixing, the start and finish times and the staggered social times. And what you need to do in a PE context is think about those changing areas. And I'll give you the 9 key areas to review afterwards. But you need to ask the questions, and some of them will be somewhat different. But what I would say now is, in case I forget to give the message out, there are some places that saying we're not going to use any equipment at all. That's the way to do it in PE. Well, I wouldn't necessarily agree, because if we do that, we'll end up with just physical activity, running around, and we'll end up with people just putting the Joe Wicks video on. Now, Joe Wicks has done some great work, but it's not physical education, and I wouldn't like it to be replaced. And if you're going to go down the line of removing every piece of equipment, it could make it quite stagnant, really. And if you think about other lessons, they're not going to have art lessons without any equipment whatsoever, for example. So we just have to think about that quite creatively. And as I said, we have no problem with that. So it's the next slide, please. So we have produced AFPE to go alongside this webinar, and AFPE is a member association, and that's worth remembering. However, at this time, we've made everything free to people on the website. So the afpe.org.uk website has given everything for free at this moment in time. So that's really, really important to remember. So this is available for you, and you can actually use it as a form of self-review, not necessarily a risk assessment template, but a form of self-review to help you to make the right decisions that you're doing. So that's the first document we've produced. So, and I'll talk you through the areas that we've covered in that at the moment. If you can move us on to the next slide, please. So
Steve,
in there.
Sorry, Steve, could I just interject? We've had a question, you just touched on risk assessments there. We've had a question related to risk assessments, and are there any templates anywhere that you're aware of that people are able to use?
No, the answer to that one is no, because it's context based, and every school will have their own risk assessments. So to me, what you would do is you would use whatever risk assessments you are normally doing, and you would just build the thinking around COVID into that rather than creating a new one. If anybody wants templates for physical education and school sport per se, i.e. not just for COVID, in the February 2019 newsletter, so you would have to remember then, on our website, we did an update on risk assessments, and we included a sample template that you can use for PE, but we've not written one for COVID, and we don't intend to. It's just COVID is one of those things that you have to think about. It's an extra thing that we didn't think about 3 months ago. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so the 9 areas, and I won't go through those because you read them in the document, but these are the things that you need to consider, only on a short time scale here, all the things that you need to make decisions on in PE and sport. Firstly, what learning are you covering? And that to me is absolutely vital, because I do know some places have been saying, well, just put a bucket of equipment out, and then that person can use that bucket and just play with it, and there's no learning intention. Or I'll put a video on and they can copy that video. We still want good PE to happen. Let's be honest, it won't be as good as it was because it's got some barriers, but it still can be good. So it's how creative we are. So the learning has to be very, very important. As I heard somebody say on another webinar this morning, well, we just get them doing something, a bit of physical activity to occupy them. No, it's physical education. We can still do this. So secondly, what's your protective measures and hygiene? Thirdly, think about the changing areas. Are you going to have changing areas? Are you going to allow the changing areas to be used, or are you going to ask them to come into school with their correct clothing on and so on? What about your teaching areas? We know now we're working in bubbles 15, but they are only maximums. So that's why the risk assessment becomes really, really important as to what we do. So that's very, very important to consider that. PE clothing itself, are you going to insist they wear a particular type of clothing? And going back to that one about the changing areas, you can combine that with that and potentially say you can come into school with the clothes that you're going to use for PE. That's a school decision though. Your group sizes, they are a maximum. If you think for some reason it needs to be smaller, it needs to be smaller. And there will be, because one of the questions that we have is, what about those children who have a particular special need? Well, that's why there is not a set answer, because you would reduce it further, perhaps do something differently, depending on the need of the group. So social distance within lessons, it still needs to be the 2 meters, and you need to plan for that. So that's part of your creative thinking, how we need to do this. And that needs to stay, and that's easier potentially outdoors than it is indoors. So wherever possible, we might be looking to do outdoor PE. At the moment, that's a bit better unless you've got the thunderstorm we had here yesterday. And then the PESPA equipment itself. What are you doing? How much equipment are you using? Are you allowing the equipment to be used and potentially even shared? That's a school decision to make on that. If you look at our frequently asked question, we're a bit looser, perhaps in the interpretation that maybe the school would go to. And then particularly, what is the washing hands sanitizer regime like for every lesson? So I won't go through all of them because we've only got a short amount of time, but they're the things that are in that document and I would encourage you to read. So next slide, please, Gav. So we've also produced, as a result of the first webinar we did, we've produced a frequently asked questions document, and that may pick up on some of the questions you will get here today. And if not, we're always happy for you to write in, because what we've said about the documents we've produced, they are time specific and time bound, and we will look to update them every couple of weeks. And we're trying to date the documents because we do know that they will change. And then the next one, please. Yeah, slightly on. So they're the key message here for going through, is that it's just making sure you're still passing those consistent messages out, because we're teaching PE and sport. We're a whole school issue here, and we have to reinforce those particular messages, which are really, really important. And make sure you've got clear notices around. And we can probably learn from sort of our experiences in swimming. If you put too many notices around, nobody pays any attention. So you've got to be quite clever as to how you put these up, where you put them up, so that they become meaningful pieces of information. And then really it's going to be just a summary really. We're saying they're making those decisions about the hygiene protocols and how you're going to use equipment. But please, I would advocate not going down the line of saying no equipment. Look at how you're going to use it and come to a decision. If your employer says no equipment, then we're stumped. You have to do it. But I'm hoping you can advocate and find ways around that. Okay, thank you. Next one, please. And so really, as a summary, it's AFPI's position. It's the Association for Physical Education's position as to where we are at this moment in time, is that we believe that we can still do a good job. We can do a meaningful job because we've got good people out there. And then you know what, hallelujah, when it all goes, this all horrible thing goes away one day, it will be even better than ever. But let's not bury our head in the sand and think it can't be good at the moment. It can. And we really do believe that they must engage in physical activity and learn to re-socialise. And our, certainly our position is when they go back to school, however it may be, many of them will pick up the academic aspect quite easy. It's all the other things that we're going to struggle with at the moment, the socialisation, the mental health, the not seeing people. They're the ones that we're really going to need to target. And you can't write those down with a lesson plan and learning objectives. We're going to have to be about the way we behave with people. And we do want them to feel safe. It's very, very strange times. None of us have ever been through this before. And maybe we need to give them that opportunity to talk because, us as adults, we're struggling. So what are they going to be like? And I think the last part there is also important, isn't it? That the workforce must also feel safe. So it's really important that we look after the workers and that the workforce themselves can advocate and actually chip into and make contributions to the decisions the school is making. And that's a great perspective really to end on, because risk assessments should always be done as a team and in situ. So it shouldn't be something imposed on you. You should hopefully be asked for your view to inform the risk assessments, which actually become the practice of that school. Okay, so I think was the last slide, I think, was it going?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah. So thanks, Steve, for that. Hopefully everybody's found it useful. I just wondered if there's any questions that haven't been raised yet that we want to ask Steve before he goes quickly. Sarah's.
Yeah, I can see quite a few coming through. So if you just want to pick one or two, just because of the time.
Yeah.
But you will find some of the frequently asked questions possibly has answered some of those questions as well, because we've done this webinar before. But do you want to pick one or two from there before we go?
Yeah, so there's one around, well, quite a few that have come through around the types of equipment to use, and a lot of people are coming back saying that they're trying to use mostly plastic. But is there any evidence or anything anywhere research-wise that you know of in terms of what materials are best to use or not to use?
No, not that I'm aware of, and when we read around, it's contradictory advice anyway, because you'll find places that say that, oh, it lives on cardboard, and then somebody says it's gone from cardboard after 2 days. It seems to live longer on metal, but we're not sure what plastic. So I don't know. We genuinely don't know. So I think we can only go on what we're being told at this moment in time, is we have to use our own expertise and accept some of the science isn't perhaps where it needs to be. So, but if you have a concern, it's a question of washing, double washing, etc. It's I certainly wouldn't profess to be an expert in that area.
Yeah, there's a couple of other questions that have come in terms of sort of lack of equipment and things like that. So Andrew, if we can probably touch on some of those in some of the activities that you'll cover as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I think the next part, what we wanted to do is kind of with Steve, give you some of the health and safety guidance and as much information there. And then with Andrew, what we wanted to do next was give you some kind of potential activity ideas. Now, this is not saying you must do them or they're all okay. It's like what Steve said, it's definitely down to you as a school, but just try and provide you with some different ideas and some of the stuff that Andrew has been doing and will be doing with the schools that he's working with.
Yeah, so that makes sense. I think that's the way, certainly the way to do it. And all the asking your time. So when you come up with an activity and an idea, just going back to these basic questions of saying, is it meeting this? Is it doing this? And hopefully the answer most of the time is yes. If it's not, you don't have to stop it. You just have to adapt it to make it work. And originally, I know people were talking about, that means, I saw one idea that we'll do gymnastics and we'll do dance, but we're not doing games, because games will be so difficult to do, because they were thinking about the contact and the competition element. Well, you can still do competition in different ways, and you don't have contact. So I think we've moved on with some really good ideas about how we can do games, still keeping the social distancing. So that's, as you said, then that's certainly the way to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Steve. I'll circulate these slides for everybody as well once we've finished. So
no problem. And if there are any questions that have come up frequently in that questions box that are probably not answered when you look at the AFBI version, feel free to drop us a line and we'll try to update the frequently asked questions piece that's online.
Yeah, perfect. Cheers, Steve. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks very much.
Right. Moving on now. So Andrew, he works for North Yorkshire Sport on a consultant basis, helping out with schools and how to use their premium. So what I asked him to do was kind of put some ideas together and some top tips and stuff that he's been doing or that he will be doing when going back to schools. So if I can hand over to Andrew next to lead you through this next part.
Cheers, Gav. If you find this useful, what I'm trying to do is create a community actually on Facebook. So if you search for top tips for primary PE, we're just trying to find like-minded teachers who can share good practice. So that'd be brilliant if you can join. But what I'm going to try to do is obviously what Gav said is go through some different types of activities that we put in place in some of our schools. So if you want to go on to the next slide. So like Steve said, what we've done is sort of try to consider what factors we need to think about and try and create risk assessments. So with regards to activities, we've come up with, it can't be contact, because obviously you need to keep that sort of 2 metre social distance. With equipment, we want it to be easy to clean and obviously not to share. So making sure that children don't pass equipment hand to hand, so it's and that they understand that. With regards to changing, our kids going to be changing in school, or are they going to come into school with a PE kit on? What's the transition from changing to going to PE? Where's the PE kit going to be stored? We also have to think about washing hands. Is there somewhere where they can access a sink or a tap outside, or is there going to be hand sanitizer provided? And then obviously where the PE lessons are going to take place. So to keep the social distancing at 2 metres, obviously we want to be outside. So we'll just go over these in a little bit more detail. So obviously the area outside if possible. What we have tried to do is designate an area for PE. So we've used part of a school field and set that up for the day, or in an ideal world would set it up for half term, but obviously some schools don't have the luxury of that much space. So if you can set it up for the day, that means that no one can go over there to use that equipment, only when it's a PE lesson. And we also set it up in zones, so each child knows which zone to go to. So we'd have one girl go to a red zone, one boy go to a blue zone, and so on. And they know that that's their zone for PE, and that becomes a normality as well. So each week they go back to the same zone, so it becomes that routine, and it's just easy to follow. And what we've noticed as well is that works quite well for playtime. So obviously everyone's got bubbles. If one bubble goes to one colour zone and one bubble goes to another colour zone, then they just always sort of have that routine and sort of understanding, and it just comes a little bit easier. Next slide. So equipment, in an ideal world, we want to limit it because we're going to have to clean up the equipment that we use, and we want to clean it after every session if possible. Students do need to understand that the equipment is theirs when they use it. So for example, if they have got a ball, they have got a kite, they're throwing javelins, then they must look after that equipment. It can't be shared, and once it's finished, or once they finish with it, they need to make sure that it comes back to you, or a designated area where equipment that has been used can be stored until it's cleaned. So for example, today I was doing a fundamental lesson with Key Stage 1, and once they'd used their kites, they brought them to me and put them in a hoop, and we knew that was the hoop, and we called it the sort of almost like a dirty hoop, where they put the dirty equipment so then it could be clean for next time. So just having somewhere where then students know as soon as they've used their equipment and it's not going to be used again, they can put it there and it can be safe and it can be left. And then obviously, like we said, just avoid students passing equipment with their hands. I mean, we have done activities where we're allowing them to kick a ball, but with hands it's a little bit different. Although I have noticed that, again, some schools have allowed bubbles to allow children in their own bubbles to pass equipment. So again, you've just got to follow what the school policy is as well. And then I know it's been mentioned in the questions already, but I would avoid using equipment made from materials such as cotton, so like bean bags or stuff like tennis balls as well. I'd try keep to plastic because it's quite easy to clean. So using cones, plastic balls like airflow balls and wind balls, kites, hoops, hurdles, SAQ ladders, footballs, basketballs. And if you do have something like a javelin, which is foam, maybe putting some duct tape around it, because it's quite easy to clean again. And then obviously once you've used it and it's all clean, make sure that it's locked away, because we all know what students are like. They go out at playtime, the first thing they'll do is they'll go straight over to a ball or a javelin or whatever they can find and start playing with it. So just make sure that it's locked away. Next slide, please.
Just on the equipment one there, there's been a couple of questions around sort of the best way to clean, and a few people have given some ideas there. Quite a lot of people coming back sort of with the whole Milton idea or anything sterilising wise. So when you're looking at equipment and what you want to be using, also be considering how you're going to clean it and how easy that's going to be. So can you get a load of coits, like you mentioned, into a big bucket of Milton?
So what we've
done
is we've used like a spray bottle, and so once they've put the equipment into a hoop, you spray the coits, or you spray it, and then it's left there for 5-10 minutes to sort of soak in and get cleaned. And that zone or that hoop with the equipment can't be touched for however long that it's going to be left in there for and cleaned. And then obviously then it can be pulled out and used again. We've just found that the easiest way to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Right, okay, yes, sorry. So activities. So these are sort of the activities that we have been looking at delivering. So we'll go over a few of them and sort of suggest some of the actual activities within them. So if you could just go to the next slide for me. So the fundamentals, so obviously looking at gross motor skills, so the ABCs, agility, balance and coordination. So you could obviously do this with your Key Stage 1 kids, but also with your Key Stage 2 children. And sort of what I would focus on is obviously jumping, running and sort of balance and throwing, and sort of break them down. So with your jumping, I look at how a child or student could sort of look at distance and height, how they can get better with that, and use different combinations. So you could look at 2-footed jumps, single jumps, hops, skips, and sort of use cones and hoops to mark them out. So you can your cones and the gaps between the cones, and so you can differentiate it or progress it by increasing the distance between the cones, or you could use hurdles to jump over. What we also do is we normally have in each zone a red and a green cone, and the red cone will mark out the harder task, and the green cone the simpler task. So obviously the students can start on the green, have a go at that. If they find it simple, then move on to the red. And it just shows they sort of then they can take a little bit of ownership on how well they're doing and when they can progress themselves. With running, I'd look at sort of different types of combinations again of footwork. So single feet in between the cones, and then you could look to getting 2 feet in between the cones, running sideways, running backwards, combining those types of running movements again, zigzags. With balancing, so obviously creating lines and moving along the lines with both feet, running on the line, hopping on the line, just different sort of methods of trying to keep that balance. And then throwing, using the kites like we've said, because they're easy to clean, and sort of throwing into hoops. Again, what I did this morning is I had 3 red hoops at the back of a zone and 3 green hoops at the front. And obviously then they sort of aim and sort of learn how to throw properly into each hoop. And obviously the red is harder, the green is sort of easier. So that's sort of like the fundamental side. And what you could do is you make it into a sort of carousel of activities. And so they could try the jumping side. So they could do a 2-footed jumping activity, then they can move to a hopping activity, then they can move to a running activity, then they can move to a throwing activity. So they can continuously move, but only when you say to move. Don't let them suddenly just do the activity and then move on. So obviously you'd have to control that sort of aspect. Next slide. So sports science and fitness, a good one for Key Stage 2, because you can make it cross-curricular as well. And I've got a PEP, so a personal exercise program that I'll send you, Gav, that you can send out. It's really simple to use. All you need to do is print it out, and then the students just keep it to themselves. So with this, just create a simple circuit. So for example, you could do press-ups, sit-ups, squats, start-ups, whatever you want to add to it. And you could do sort of 40 seconds on, 40 seconds off, and have them working in pairs. But obviously the pairs, they're still in zones. So you'd have one zone facing another zone. And so for the 40 seconds that the student is doing their activity, the other student is counting for them. And once they finish their 40 seconds, they then write down their score, and then the other partner does it. And so they continuously do that for maybe 5 circuits if you want. Another good way to do it is once they've done their sort of 5 circuits, you could turn it into a bit of a competition, and you could have different coloured zones competing against other coloured zones. So, for example, yesterday we did 3 different coloured zones. We had red, yellow, and green, and so we did press ups first, and we sort of had a competition which zone could do the most press ups. So they added up. So there's 3 in each. There's 3 students for each colour zone. So there's 3 in red, 3 in blue, and 3 in yellow. So they added up the press ups, so a bit of cross-curricular maths as well, and then it would see who'd won. And then obviously cross-curricular science, so you're looking at sort of talking about pulse rate, resting heart rate, maximum heart rate, warm-ups, cool-downs, learn about the muscles, so the musculoskeletal system, the cardiovascular system. So there's lots of different things you can do and sort of combine with that one. So it's a really good one that you can do over half term. Next slide. So athletics, a bit similar to sort of multi-skills and the fundamentals. So you split it into running, jumping and throwing. So with running, I'd look at sprint technique. So start with sprint starts, and then the transition from your start through to the actual running part, which is sort of looking at driving through with the knees, high knees, and driving with the arms. For the longer distance, sort of look at pacing. Jumping, start looking at standing long jump. So how do we get from one side to the other? Sort of 2 feet, using their arms, bending the knees, right? Get the kids or the students, to sort of think about how they can improve their jump. So what will help them get further? Triple jump, another good one. So get them to come up with their own combinations first, and then break down the triple jump and start with a hop. Use cones, so they can use their own cones to mark how far they can get. So do the hop first, right? How can we improve our hop? What can we do to get further? Then add the step, right? What can we do to sort of get further with the hop and step? And then obviously finish with the 2-footed landing, and get them to do it, and then turn it into a bit of a competition. And then throwing, so I'd use a ball as a shot put or kite for a discus, and just make sure that they're not throwing into other people's zones, so they're throwing away from their zone. And again, this could be taught through reciprocal cards, or you could sort of deliver it yourself, just depending on how much work you want to sort of give yourself. Next slide. Or OAA, so problem solving activities. You can find lots of different activities online. There's lots of good sort of resources on there. And orienteering is a really good individual activity. All you need to do is create your own simple map of the school grounds. It doesn't have to be detailed. And then put your own control points sort of around the school grounds, and the students need to go off and find them. Something that we do is we take pictures next to the control point, so not of the control point, but next to it. And then we print them off, and then the students have to use the pictures to find the control point and sort of complete the challenge that way. So it's just a sort of different way of doing it. Next slide. Dance. So you can do dance outside. Obviously, indoors you can do it, but we're trying to avoid being inside if we can. So yeah, doing dance outside is still possible. We use spots so the students know exactly where they should be. For the dance, again, you can use your zones. And what you want to do is keep travel to a minimum. Maybe look at the hand drive, something like that, and sort of create individual routines following themes and stories. And then when they're performing, obviously just get them to sit down on their spot or in their zone. It's nice and simple, and students can sort of do some assessment on other students while sitting there. Next slide, please. And this is what Steve was saying about games. So like there is sort of, you can look at different types of games and activities and be sport specific. So you could create skills-based sessions. So for example, over 6 weeks, you could look at invasion games, and your focus could be on dribbling. So you could do 2 weeks on dribbling with a football, then you could do 2 weeks of dribbling with a basketball, and then 2 weeks of dribbling with a hockey ball and a hockey stick. And what you could do is challenge the kids to sort of work out what's different. How do we dribble with a football in our feet? How do we dribble with a basketball with our hands? And how do we dribble with the hockey ball? And what makes it different? Again, just make sure that all the students have their own individual equipment and it's cleaned at the end. Net wall. Obviously, you can look at racket skills. Again, every individual has to have their own racket and their own ball, but you sort of look at forehand, backhand activities, bouncing the ball in a hoop, and then they've got to try and catch it on the racket. There's lots of different types of games you can sort of find online with that one. And then fielding techniques as well. So you could look at catching, so doing low and high catches, throwing over arm and underarm, picking the ball up off the ground and throwing at targets. All sort of activities that you can sort of do individually and do it or perform it in a zone. And again, you could do peer assessment with this. So you could get the zones working in pairs. So so for example, you could have 2 red zones and both kids are, or both students are in those zones. One student could be performing a task and the other student could be sort of assessing them, looking at how they're doing it, and then sort of give feedback on how to improve, what they're doing right, and then obviously then they could swap the roles. So there's lots of different aspects. So you can still do physical education, you still do PE, just have to adapt your lesson slightly. I think that's it. Next slide.
Is that it from you, Andrew?
Think so. So yeah, just back to this, what you just need to do, and what Steve was talking about, is just make sure that you've got it planned before you sort of deliver any sort of session. You know what activity you're going to be doing. Make sure that it's non-contact. The students know where they're going to be. Can you clean the equipment? Is it going to be easy enough to do? The transition between changing to coming out. Obviously things about sort of hand washing, and then obviously making sure that you're outside and you've got plenty of space. Thanks, Gav.
Cheers, Andrew. Andrew's details are on there if anybody wants to contact him directly. Is there any questions that they want to ask Andrew at the moment? If there is, if you'd want to quickly type it into the chat box and we can pick those up. The other thing I wanted to do now was open it up to the floor. If anybody wants to add anything to all that, give some experience of what you guys have been doing. If anybody's actually looked to plan for next academic year, any kind of medium-term plans of how they're going to deliver PE, we're welcome to hear from anybody really about any experiences. If there's none, that's fine. Obviously, we know we're all reacting at the moment and doing the best we can. So hopefully, as a minimum, there's some ideas there that you're able to take away.
I know someone was asking about September and sort of concerned about what sort of they could deliver again. And I think it's just looking at your curriculum map and seeing what you're delivering over the full year, academic year, and if you can sort of move things around. So if you're going to do a fitness block, you don't need a lot of equipment for that. So maybe you could do that first in the first sort of term. You could do dance in the first term and just maybe change a few things around. You just got to be adaptable and sort of look at what things you are delivering for the year and if you can change it.
Real. Cheers, Andrew. I'm just looking at some of them coming in at the moment.
Yeah, there's a few ideas coming through now at the moment.
What we'll do at the end as well is we'll save the chat and we'll circulate that so that people can have a read back through it if they wish, because there's a few ideas of what school's been doing. If anybody wants to unmute and say anything, please feel free. We'll give you a second or so to do that. Or if you're just happy putting it in the chat box for us to share and people to read, we can kind of continue on as well.
I think as well, Gav, I don't know whether it's worth mentioning at this point, the work on the MYS website that's been pulled together about the activity ideas. Yeah,
so what we've been doing over the last few weeks really is trying to pull everything to one place on our website. And within that, we've got the health and safety section, which is the AFP guidance and links to the government guidance. We've got a CPD section that takes you to some online learning, and some organisations now have done some modules around social distance PE. So there's stuff that you can pick up and share with your colleagues there. Some are free, some are sign up free at the moment. Some there is a cost, but for the time being, if you've got any of your premium, feel free to use that. And then we've also done an activity page where anything we've seen or been sent that may be useful regarding social distancing PE, we've tried to throw on there. So there's lots of ideas. And again, there's a majority on there are free downloadable, but some of them you need to sign up to the organisation for free to get access to the resources. So there's lots of stuff on there. We'll circulate it round. It's in the, hopefully you'll be able to see the link in front of us now. So we would welcome anybody who wants to share anything with us as well, that they're happy to share. We can upload that as well, because I think at the moment we really need to try and support each other through this, and give as many ideas as what we can to each other around what people are doing in PE. So yeah, on there at the moment, I think there's 7 or 8 different idea organisations. Some of them are 100 ideas for PE. Some of it's more of a short-term thing, a real mixture of stuff. So we're putting more on there all the time. So keep checking back, and hopefully that'll be some use as well.
There's a question that's just come through there, Gav, and it's a valid point, and there's lots and lots of activities or ideas out there that everyone's kind of trying to pull together and put in, but there's that concern around progression. So yes, you can think of lots of different activities to be doing each day or each session, but building in that progression, where normally you would possibly do dribbling, for example, in week 2, and then progress to something else in week 3, and then something else in week 4. There's a couple of questions around that. Oh, sorry, Andrew, you've just responded to that one.
Andrew, do you want to give a quick update?
Yeah, I think as well. I think Steve sort of. Oh, sorry. I think Steve was sort of saying as well. It's not going to be, your normal PE. Sorry, I've got a puppy going crazy in the background. So yeah, it's not normal PE. So you're going to have to adapt whatever you do. So, that's why I suggested maybe looking at different types of invasion games over a 6-week block. So you can talk about dribbling. You could also talk about movement. So you can move in away off the ball, different types of sort of activities like that. It's just trying to adapt your lessons to the best sort of to best you can, really, and sort of using the space that you've got. And sort of, as long as you've got some progress, it might be either that you talk about understanding and look at sort of assessing and sort of talking about how you can be a better coach and getting a child to try coach another child. It's just trying to adapt the lesson as best as you can, if that makes sense.
Is that all right, Simone? What we'll try and do is we'll try and get down on paper some examples, and might even speak to Andrew, see if he can give like maybe just one example of how he's progressing something that they're doing, and then again we'll be able to send it out through the email list, if that's okay with you, Andrew.
Yeah,
and anybody else
fine,
for that matter, anybody else that wants to kind of, if they wanted to support us with putting out like that together, we'll be able to circulate it round. Brill. Right, so bit of an NYS update. We're looking at more, obviously, online events, and around our teacher stuff. We're looking at conversation with events. So it might be short snippets, but what we would like from you guys, and it doesn't have to be now, please feel free to submit anything that you want later down the line, is what topics might be useful. So straight away we might be looking at progression and having a kind of a conversation with people, and they're looking at progression in the current climate, and we want them to be short and snappy. So if anybody wants to come in on those as well, we're always looking for talkers, speakers to come and give your examples, because you guys are living it, you guys are dealing with it. So if there is anybody that's wanting specific topics, please feel free to drop us a line, and we will try and instigate them best we can. And equally, if there's anybody that has got a burning need to present something, to have that conversation with, then we'll welcome people onto the panel as well. We've been pulling together as many resources as we can see, really, as possible, just to try and equip people and schools the best they can. I think it's totally unknown to the majority of schools how school's going to look, never mind PE. So we're just wanting to give somewhere where people can go just to gather ideas, and again, please feel free to drop us a line with any questions that you may have. We're obviously here to try and support you guys best we can. We've talked about this for a while, but we've officially launched the YH Learning online platform, and actually the teacher modules that are on there have had over 2,500 people taking part in that. What we've done alongside that is put that into our CPD section, but try to pull together as many other organisations that are offering online CPD as well. So it might not be necessary for you as a PE lead, but you may want to have a look to see where you can see if there's help for any of your staff that may be beneficial. I think at the moment it's quite a hot area is the online learning. Particularly at the moment, there's a lot of free stuff out there as well, which ordinarily may not have been. So maybe strike while the iron's hot. And then we've been delivering virtual school games, and I know a lot of the school games organisers have been delivering challenges and events and stuff as well, which has been great to see. We're planning a few more of those. I think there's a team run out at the moment. And whilst we're on the school games, it's probably worth giving a little bit of an update. Is we're in a similar position with school games as I suppose you guys are with schools. Is we're looking at what county rounds look like. I believe there's been a meeting today with the school games organisers and how progression from local rounds to county rounds may look. We're trying to work to a calendar that we set out, but what sports are in there I think is yet to be decided. But we're also waiting for guidance, and there's a meeting tomorrow with the national consultation group, which we're a part of. So I know there's a few questions in the lead up to this meeting around local events and cluster rounds, to which we don't officially have any answers to that, but there is some guidance that's being worked up at the moment nationally to try and support schools with how they may look to go off site, or what virtual competitions may look like. So hopefully we'll be able to get that guidance out. It'll probably actually go through the school games organisers. I think there's a few on this call, so if they've got anything they would like to add into that, please feel free. But I think at the moment it's probably worth saying as well, we're reacting like you guys are reacting, looking at the guidance, trying to adapt the best we can. What, from my point of view, as supporting primary schools around their PE and PE premium, what would be really useful is to know what challenges come up for you guys as often as you get them, really, so that we can see if it's common and if there's any sharing of practice that we're able to share with you guys and support everybody to do the best that we can in what is very strange times for us all at the moment. Moving on, if this is going to work. Oh, so yeah, this is the page that we put together with loads of different ideas on there. Feel free to use it as much or as little as you like. Hopefully it's just everything in one place, so that it might make it a little bit easier for you guys as PE leads to support the staff when they are coming back, and hopefully ease a few worries and influence head teachers and governors when you're talking about what your PE might look like over the next few weeks and from September onwards, and not knowing what changes may come. We'll keep updating this as we get updates as well. Yes, so
Yeah.
this should
Just a couple of points so that the page hasn't moved on.
Right, let's have a look. So let me go back. Can everybody see it now? No. Why is that?
No,
it's still on.
Black screen. It's just what we need. Let me see. Bear with me 1 second. It's just telling me it's paused. Just bear with me 1 second. And then can everybody see the slide? Oh, no, let me just no.
yeah, that's coming through now.
Yep. So this is where the links are. This is the link to the online learning as well. And then this is the page that we've put together, and we just tried to pull everything, like I said, into one place. So hopefully it's a little bit easier for schools to use and find when you're leading PE. So moving on to the next agenda item, there's frequently asked questions document that we was hopeful would have been released by the Department for Education. And what that has been is, as schools have been asking North Yorkshire Sport, active partnerships, questions around the PE premium in particular for purposes of this meeting, been collating them, sending them off to the Active Partnership Network, and they've been relaying those to the Department for Education. That document's not yet come out, which we're disappointed with, but unfortunately there's a lot going on at the moment and we can't do too much around. I wanted to give you guys just a little bit of kind of understanding of the types of questions that have gone into that. So they'll talk around underspend, with obviously a huge chunk of the academic year not taking place in its normal format. Are schools allowed to carry that forward? Also around the publishing of the data, a lot of assessments may not have taken place, such as the swimming. So that because that report's not yet that document's not yet being released, I asked for an update yesterday, and the update that they've had most recently is, at present, the current conditions for the PE premium should be followed. So that is those that was released September, October time. So that at the moment they're saying that their stance is that there shouldn't be any carry forward. You'd still need to publish your data best you can, but obviously for things like swimming, if it's not happened, put that on your publication because of COVID. And yeah, just almost do the best you can with regard to that report, which I know is not necessarily the best thing that we all wanted to hear, but you can only do what you can do and what you know. So anything that has happened up to date, I would say, publish that. If there is underspend there, perhaps look at what you want to be spending it on at the moment, but perhaps looking more towards next academic year so that the money's spent. A question that we would like to ask you guys is, when that document's published, would you like maybe a shorter version of this type of meeting so that we can go through it together, or would you be happy with just the questions being sent out so that you've got the kind of the guidance and questions there?
Yes, please. There's a lot of the answers coming through there.
Yes, please. Right. Okay. What we will do then is, obviously we don't know the date that this is going to be released. As soon as we get it released, we'll try and arrange it for later that week. We'll record, or possibly earlier the next week, we'll record that session as well, so that anybody that can't attend, we will have it recorded so that hopefully they've got that interpretation from ourselves and the questions again that understood the best they can. But again, if you're not able to make that meeting, whenever it may be, feel free to just give us a call or drop us an email and we'll go through it with you best we can. But yeah, hopefully it'll be soon, and hopefully it will be with some form of announcement of what's happening next academic year with the premium, because again, at present we're unsure of that. Let's see if I can move on. Right, so summer provision is thank you for those that completed the survey that I sent yesterday. What I'd like to reiterate is, it's not North Yorkshire Sport, or it's not North Yorkshire County Council expecting schools to be providing this summer provision. What we are trying to do is best understand what provision is going to be available next academic year, not over the summer, sorry, what that looks like and who's involved with it, exploring the challenges that schools have and worries that they've got, exploring the challenges that providers have got, and what their worries have been, and are they wanting to, are they planning to do it, ultimately, so that there is some supported, some continued childcare at the end of it for children that need it, vulnerable children, key workers that may need it. So what a lot of the responses I got yesterday was the concerns that teachers need a break. By no means are we expecting teachers to be delivering this. So yeah, we wanted to make sure that we're clear on that. But what we did want to do is try and open up a conversation to understanding, because schools are a little bit further advanced than the likes of leisure centres with regard to reopening, if there would be the potential will to offer up their school facilities? If not, kind of why not? If there's the will for leisure, for coaching agencies and companies to go into school and still be offering it, or are they wanting to back off at the moment? So any kind of questions that schools have got, any opinions that they've got on this, we would really welcome, so that we can feed this into conversations with counties, so that we're all in a better state to try and react. Because again, we are learning, we're reacting, we're trying to plan, but we don't know necessarily what we're planning for. When we've had discussions so far, we've looked at kind of four areas. So there's the key worker and vulnerable care that schools have still been offering.
Give him a scrub.
Potentially handing that over to coaching coaches that you're currently using. We've looked at potentially using some of the people transition, and that's not necessarily year 6 going up to 7, transition support for students coming back into school, and that might be 2 days a week. It might be one for one.
Gav, sorry to interrupt. Amy, could you possibly mute that, please?
Let me see. Let's see if I can get. That's better. Yeah. So yeah, just
thank you.
Offer some different
people
ideas.
That couldn't
as well.
hear a little bit of that, Gav.
So I'll just go through this slide again. So when we've been chatting to schools, to county council, to anybody regarding kind of the summer provision, it's almost come up that there's been a few different areas. These 4 areas are almost what we've categorised. So there's been the key worker and vulnerable care, which schools have been doing, but could they possibly hand over that to sports coaching agencies, to arts clubs, but perhaps using their facilities? Transition, and I don't know for those that heard it before, transition doesn't necessarily have to be year 6 moving on. It could be supporting your children to come back to school, so they're getting familiar with that environment again, but using sport and physical activity as a tool for that. And if that is the case, and it could work for you, then that could be something that you use for your premium, with, even though that school's not involved in that, and we're not expecting school staff to necessarily deliver that. It's just, it could be an option for schools if you're wanting to try and put on something in your local area, or support the children within your school to have that care throughout the summer. And also the government have been asking schools that are returning to focus on the mental well-being and physical well-being of students. And again, this could be a use of the premium that's not necessarily delivered by yourselves, that's handed over throughout the summer, and you can guide some of that for students. So and then the last area, which is one thing that is not us whatsoever, is the catch-up that's been murmured around by government, and we don't know what that looks like. So there's lots of things that kind of potentially could work in there, and we're just trying to map out as much as possible, really. So if you haven't filled in the survey that I sent, please do so. If what I've just said has maybe changed your thinking, and you're able to offer up some organisations that may be able to support some provision over summer, please fill it in again. What we're doing around this is, there is sport sectors are trying to produce some guidance, and that's for leisure facilities who might normally offer some care. It's for sports coaching agencies, and that's currently in development. Like I say, everything is being planned and everything is being reacted to at the moment. We're having the same conversations, or very similar conversations, with local authorities who might usually deliver things with facilities such as community centres, and also organisations that usually host these types of activities, just again so we can get as much information down in one place, so that there is going to be that support and care there, for a few reasons really. Because key worker children may need to have that provision, vulnerable children may need to have that provision, and also just parents sometimes need that break as much as the children need that break, and usually it is there. We've all got work to try and continue on with. There was a comment came yesterday, which is a real good point. Key worker children may need just time away from school, which is something that I'd not thought of until that point was made. So again, that's something that we're able to take to county just so that we've got as much information as we can. And then we're trying to gather intelligence of challenges and the varying models that people are doing out there. One school informed us that they're using their coach that usually goes in and supports them to school, but just for their school, and they're sticking to their bubbles for only children that go to their school. So it's almost like a bespoke private sports camp, but for that school. And again, this is just stuff that we may not have thought about, that's the way it's being delivered. So if there's anything that people wish to input into this discussion, there's no wrong or right answer. We're not asking schools to open, we're not asking them to shut, we're not judging those for not knowing. If there is anybody out there that wants to open up a conversation around this right now, we really welcome that, so that we can do the best we can for the children, really. So I am gonna shut up because I've waffled on for quite a while, and open it up to the floor, really, if there's anybody wants to say anything. Sarah, has anything come through on the chat box?
Yeah, I'm really sorry, but my internet dropped out, so the chat's disappeared and it's an empty box now. But there's been quite a few people suggesting that heads need to be asked about this, but as far as I'm aware, heads have already been asked about all this information.
Right. And ultimately, the decision will lie with the head teacher. And I know on here we've got a few head teachers, and the majority are PE leads. So it might be just things that you're able to then take back to your school to potentially open that conversation. I know we've also got a couple of providers on here. I don't know if any of those want to unmute and say anything from their point of view, what challenges they found and whether schools potentially could support. It's, like I say, it's just a conversation that we're trying to understand, really.
Gav.
Say that again, Andrew.
I said I know we spoke earlier about this, and I think what the issue is at the moment is just that there's no clear government guidance on what they want for summer. So schools are unsure, and sort of private providers are still unsure. I was actually speaking to a head this afternoon, and they were saying that if they were to stay open as a school but bring in a private provider, they would still have to have their named safeguarding officer in school, so they would not be willing to do that.
Okay.
So I don't know how true that is. So it's until sort of there's struggling a little bit on what to do.
Yeah. Well, cheers for that, Andrew. Is anybody else want to put out there at the moment regarding kind of the feelings and what parents might be saying, or if you've had any of those types of conversations as well?
Hi Gavin, it's Paula from York City.
Hi Paula.
Hi, yeah, we're talking, obviously we would normally run school summer holiday provision. We normally have a number of different offers. One is park-based kind of family activity sessions, and we tend to fund those. They're free, so we tend to fund them through City of York Council, through Ward Committee, and we've been in contact with all our local wards, and they all still want us to go ahead with those. But I appreciate that's more physical activity, mental well-being, sort of general sessions. They can't be used as childcare because they're a maximum of an hour long. So obviously we're looking at drop-off and pick-up times, number of children, all those sort of things that we're having to consider. Our normal holiday courses that are more childcare-led, because they're sort of a full day, we're currently looking at those with a view to trying to make decisions over the course of the next couple of weeks, as I'm sure a lot of other private providers are doing the same. But if there's any local schools, particularly sort of, we've not a huge team, so I have to sort of probably keep it closer to York area, but if there are any schools that would be interested in talking to us, our biggest issue, our first issue at the moment is our normal venues, as you said, leisure centres or grassroots football clubs, or even secondary schools aren't available for us to book. So, you know, we'd be looking to either work with the school to provide it something that's solely for that school, or to actually just look at booking a venue as normal. We take responsibility for safeguarding, and we would look to sort of how we run that and take bookings, but the school might then have an option of something to promote to their families rather than it being something that they're running, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I'm just looking at the kind of the chat box now, and it seems to be, and it's not surprising. I think it's something that we're all in. We're just wanting that confirmation and that guidance, aren't we, so that we can make better decisions. And that's not surprising. When we kind of set out on looking into this, we kind of thought that would be the case, and also we knew that the expectation for teachers to teach over the summer or be involved would be a concern for schools and a challenge for schools. And again, we're not expecting that whatsoever. And that's kind of what seems to be coming through on the chat there, that it's not necessarily anything against opening up their school facilities if we were confident that the guidance was right and we knew that we could cover those guidelines to the best we can, really. So thanks for those people that have made those comments. I guess we'll take all this back to county from a school's perspective, because I know quite often things are put on schools and to schools. What we wanted to do with this, we'll just get as many opinions as we can from schools on their thoughts and feelings and stuff. So yeah, it'd be really good. We really appreciate your time kind of having those conversations there, and again, some of the stuff that's coming through may be useful for those providers that are looking into things for the summer for those kids. So yeah, appreciate everybody commenting on that. Let's move on.
Yeah, just to go back on a question that was missed earlier on, it was just in relation to the comments on things at the moment, the messaging around things staying the same, and it was just a question regarding, do we think that current position of carry on as normal is likely to stay the same? I know it's a very difficult question to answer because we're waiting for that guidance as well, but if there's anything that you can add to that.
When it comes to the spend of the premium, is that
yeah, carry forward and reporting and everything else?
It's so difficult to say. My gut instinct, and this is my gut instinct, is that there will be some relaxation of certain parts. So it may be that schools can carry over some stuff, because there could be quite a chunk of money not spent. And last thing that we have always advocated, that we wanted things to be sustainable and not wasted. There was a school contact me last 2 weeks ago or so, and they said they'd not spent £8,000, and the last thing that we would want, and I'm sure the school would want, would just to be thinking about potentially wasting that money on stuff that's not relevant for their school, because we always say we want you to think about what's right for your school. But that said, that's just my gut instinct, and this is why we requested these questions. We're putting these questions in April around Easter, because we were already getting schools asking us about it. So yeah, I really wouldn't like to say. It's just a personal opinion, but I think we've all got to just wait and see what happens with that frequently asked questions document, and hope that we get it sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
I mean, one thing that you could look to do is, if you know things that you are wanting for next academic year, whether that be CPD, coaches, resources, contact the company that provides them or those agencies that provide them, and see if you can buy them in now, but for next academic year, and show that you're thinking longer term. And again, I think if you're publishing that on your website, we wouldn't look, that wouldn't be criticised because of COVID, and I would probably just put that as part of the explanation of why you've done that as well, is due to the closure of schools. Hope that helps a little bit, and I can just say we'll get that information out to you all as soon as possible.
Thank you.
So that said, the website publication, I think this time last year we had a bit of a longer session on this, but what I wanted to do is just bring it back to people's attention that the deadline's the 31st of July. What we need to see when we're doing our mapping and reporting back to DFE and Sport England is the amount that you've received, the breakdown of how it's been spent, swimming data for year 6, sustainability of what you've spent it on, the impact it's having, And our mapping commences on the 1st of August, which is why schools have got the deadline for the 31st of July. I think there'll be a lot of schools that will be able to put a lot of detail and good work into this up to kind of the Christmas, February half-term time. And then obviously things from there will potentially have dropped off. And I don't know how our reporting, whether it's going to change much, whether we have to put anything to do with the current situation, but I would perhaps just put, if you can't provide that swimming data because the assessment didn't happen, I would put that you didn't do the assessments because you weren't able to access the pool due to COVID restrictions. And then I think it just makes it a little bit clearer then. And if anybody else does come in, so Ofsted, whenever they return, or any inspectors that are keen on checking up on this sort of thing, they've got it clear as day, and you've got the explanation as to why that is the way it is. What I've put at the bottom, and again we'll circulate these slides, is there's an AFP template. You don't have to use this one. It's one that's been developed by AFP and the Youth Sport Trust. And if you complete that template, then we know that you'll be meeting the requirements of the premium and those expectations above. Last year, when Sarah and myself was checking the websites, we started to pull off some good examples and crop them into one document again. So that's on our website for people to go have a look at. Around mainly what we find is the sustainability and the impact is slightly missing or not as strong. So we try to pull off as many good examples of that type of thing as possible. And then again, last year, we got Dan Wilson, who's a colleague of ours that works for Yorkshire Sport Foundation, to do about a 25-minute webinar on the publishing your offer. So that's available in the YH Learning for free if anybody wants to go have a look at that and just get some examples on what we're looking for and what government are looking for, really. So we just wanted to bring that back to kind of your attention, because there is still the expectation at the moment that schools will be publishing their offer by the end of July. Sarah, do you want to pick up on the awards before?
Yeah, there's a question there regarding swimming assessment and templates and stuff. I was just responding there. Swim England have created some of that information. So it was, I've lost it now, it's jumped up. Can't find who it was that asked, but we have got some information. So if you want to email us, we can send that link across to you.
If you want, Sarah, do you want to fire it across to me, and I'll put it in kind of the email out to everybody after this as well, if that's going to help schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the PE Awards, many of you will have already been involved in the PE Awards on previous years. Some of you may have been winners, which is great. Some of you may not be aware of it all, so I'll just really quickly touch on what the awards are. They're essentially designed for us to be able to showcase and celebrate the work that our schools are doing. It's the Yorkshire Awards, so it's across the whole of Yorkshire. It's not just North Yorkshire. We have a local round in North Yorkshire, and then a regional round as well. And it really is just that we want to celebrate the innovative work that schools have been doing within PE and school sport, and highlight some of the real impact that the PE premium has had, and how the schools have actually utilised that. There's 4 awards, and each of those awards are linked to the KPIs within the premium. And so it should be work that you're already doing anyway, and it's just our way of really highlighting and like I say, showcasing that really good work. The awards had been due in the summer, but obviously with everything going on, things have changed slightly. So we've now extended our deadline dates and also pushed back the award date. So the new date for awards to be, applications to be received is the 31st of July. So you've now got until the 31st of July to put any applications in. The awards are now due to take place on the 16th of October. Again, because of how things are, we are now going to be hosting those virtually this year. In previous years, we've had an awards ceremony where we've invited schools along. This year it will be virtual, but the details of that are still being discussed. But that's just to remind people that we really do want to celebrate what it is that you're doing. It's a really good way of sharing best practice and seeing what other schools are doing. So if you've got any examples, please go to our website and see the information about the awards and get yourselves a nomination put in before the 31st of July.
Yes, Sarah.
Does anybody have any questions on the awards? Nope.
Nope.
Okay.
So we're just about done now. So is there anything that any of the business that anybody wants to open up a discussion around before kind of we leave? If there's anything that you want us to be looking at over the next few weeks to try and support you guys, particularly probably back for September, please, just anything else that anybody wants to discuss, unmute yourself and ask those questions, I guess. If not, and while we're waiting for those to come through, in the chat box, I've just put a feedback form. It's another type form. If people could fill that in before they go. Ordinarily, these meetings take place in York, which we know is not ideal, but it's probably about as central as we can get really for North Yorkshire on a Wednesday evening. The attendance for this has been better, but we would like to know whether people would be interested in doing more of it like this. Those that attend the normal sessions, whether you prefer those. We're really kind of open really to understanding kind of how we can support you guys better and get out there more. So yeah, if you could fill that in, hopefully there'll be some questions in there that'll help us guide whether and how we provide this support in the future. Will there be any Zoom PCPD? Sarah Anderson, can I just ask you to unmute and we'll have a quick conversation around that Zoom PCPD and what it might look like, so that we can potentially facilitate.
Sorry, I am here. I'm there. Yeah, just I haven't accessed any PECPD for quite a while. Just I've been out of the loop with PE subject leadership for a little bit, having children maternity leave, and so I could do with updating myself really and staff in schools. I wondered if there were going to be any opportunities for staff to do some CPD via Zoom or anyway in the next academic year. Obviously not now.
I think we can absolutely facilitate that. If we have an idea of the types of CPD you would like, then we can work with some of the specialists that we work with and getting kind of the speakers to be able to deliver on that. It's probably also worth having a look at that online CPD section that we've put together as well, to see if any of that might be relevant, so that you can plan it in for next year. Some of that is more of a module thing that you go through at your own kind of pace, really. But
okay.
Yeah, I think there's gymnastics seems to be coming through quite a lot, and Becca, gymnastics and dance. Well, yeah. Becca, who's on this call, she is one of our specialists as well that works in quite a few primary schools. I'm sure that we can have that conversation with Becca to see if she can do a Zoom gymnastic PCPD. The difficulty we sometimes have is not knowing what's going to be useful and what schools need. So feedback, anything like that, and in the feedback form there is a section around kind of what CPD would you like. So okay. if you add it into there, then we can absolutely look to facilitate that as part of our planning for next academic year.
Okay, great, thank you.